Monday before, this correspondence went to Chief Long. Hello to Chief Long. We received this message today from the student group. There is a student roof access pretty close to where CK will be set up at the Utah Valley. The Sorensen Center has a couple of staircases that go up to walkways on the roofs. And so you want access to the roof. And came back and said, I was told students have access above us. If this is true, it would be nice to either have it controlled access or allow one of my guys to be there as well if possible. He comes back and his last correspondence was, I got you covered.
A single question hangs in the air tonight. What truly unfolded in those chaotic seconds when Charlie Kirk was struck, and why have so many details remained buried beneath confusion and speculation? Before we unpack the story, remember to subscribe for continued coverage. The first point guiding this investigation begins with a first-hand account, one offered by the head of security who stood only a few feet from Charlie Kirk when the shooting occurred. His voice carries the weight of someone still processing the impact of that moment. During his interview, he detailed what he witnessed from the initial sound to his instinctive reaction. He described hearing a sudden crack echo through the area, followed by a physical jolt of realization that something had gone terribly wrong. What followed was a blur of rapid movement, assessment, and pressure-driven decision-making. In his retelling, he made it clear that nothing about the situation felt predictable or staged. Instead, he emphasized the raw human scramble to respond when a life-threatening emergency appears without warning. He talked about diving forward to shield Kirk, not because protocol demanded it, but because instinct took over. And as he explained his actions, he dismissed the notion that anyone on the security team hesitated or stood idle. They followed their training, he said, but they also acted out of a sense of duty and genuine concern. His account stressed the humanity of the moment, the fear, the urgency, and the shock that any team would face when confronted with an unexpected attack. Much of the public conversation since the incident has been fueled by online commentary rather than direct testimony. Hearing the officer recount his experience gave clarity to what was previously fragmented by rumor. It also underscored the emotional toll of those seconds. He spoke of the responsibility he carried, the responsibility his colleagues shared, and the heavy reflection that has followed them ever since. While he did not seek sympathy, his story made one truth clear: those present that day were not immune to fear, confusion, or the weight of sudden crisis. Their efforts were human, imperfect, but undeniably urgent. The second major point centers on warnings that had surfaced before the event. According to the officer, rooftop access had been a recurring concern. He described multiple conversations about the elevated vantage points around the venue and how they could pose risks if left unsecured. These warnings, he said, were not dramatic or exaggerated. They were simple, professional assessments based on experience and training. He noted that security teams routinely evaluate rooftops, windows, and stairwell access because those areas can dramatically alter the safety profile of an event. The issue, he explained, was not that concerns were unnoticed, but that they were not acted upon. He recalled how his team communicated their observations to local authorities, pointing out the need for controlled access and monitored entry points. Yet despite these discussions, he said they received repeated assurances that everything was handled. His tone throughout the interview remained measured, never accusatory, but there was a sense of disappointment woven through his words. He described the uneasy feeling of knowing a potential vulnerability existed and being unable to address it directly. From his account, it's clear the security team believed they had done what they could. They communicated their concerns, documented them, and sought support from the appropriate channels. What seemed to trouble him most was that those concerns appeared to dissolve into procedural gaps. He emphasized that in event security, coordination between private and institutional teams is crucial, and when communication falters, risk spreads silently. Whether the ignored warnings would have ultimately prevented the incident is impossible to say definitively, but his retelling highlighted another truth: safety often depends on collaboration, and when that collaboration weakens, vulnerability grows. His recollection is not about blame, it is about acknowledging missed connections that may help prevent future oversights. The third core point involves the denied request for rooftop coverage, which the security team had hoped to implement as a precaution. According to the officer, the team asked for permission to place personnel in elevated observation positions. He explained that such requests are standard during large-scale events. Rooftop placement is not about suspicion, it is about visibility and reaction time. A security team positioned above the crowd can spot unusual movement more quickly, respond more effectively, and prevent threats before they escalate. The officer recalled that their request was made respectfully and professionally. However, they were told that local regulations and jurisdictional boundaries prevented them from stationing their team on the roof. The refusal came not from malice or indifference, but from procedural constraints. Still, the officer admitted that the denial left him uneasy. He understood the rules, he said, but rules sometimes collide with practical needs. In his interview, he did not express anger toward the authorities. Instead, he expressed frustration with the rigidity of systems that sometimes limit preventative action. He reflected on how different agencies operate with different expectations, and how these mismatches can create blind spots. What becomes evident is that the security team did not want to overreach, they simply wanted to secure areas they had experience identifying as high risk. When denied that ability, they relied on the assurances that local authorities would monitor those same areas. He emphasized that trust between agencies is essential. Yet trust alone cannot replace the value of shared responsibility. His reflections were a call for future events to prioritize coordinated flexibility, where safety concerns can override bureaucratic obstacles when necessary. The fourth major point focuses on those assurances, specifically the promise from Chief Long that the rooftop access and surrounding safety concerns had been addressed. From the officer's perspective, this message carried significant weight. When a command-level official states that an area is secure, security teams typically proceed based on that information. He explained that such trust is foundational to event coordination. No team can monitor every area alone, coverage is shared, and confidence in each partner agency is essential. In the interview, he shared excerpts from the correspondence exchanged prior to the event. The messages suggested that rooftop areas used by students or staff would be controlled and monitored. However, after the incident, lingering questions emerged about whether that monitoring occurred as planned. The officer did not speculate on what went wrong. Instead, he highlighted the importance of accountability in communication. He explained that when something as simple as securing a stairwell is left unclear, uncertainties form quickly. And in security work, uncertainty is the last thing anyone wants. His tone remained careful, focusing on the principle rather than the individual. He used the moment to emphasize how vital it is for commitments, especially those related to safety, to be followed through. He described the emotional difficulty of watching colleagues question themselves afterward, wondering what more could have been done. Rather than pointing fingers, he encouraged institutions to learn from the experience. His central message was that safety requires both communication and verification. When promises are made, they must be confirmed. When risks are identified, they must be addressed. This point became one of the most important lessons of the interview. Responsibility is not about blame, it is about prevention. The fifth major point turned toward the moment of injury and the immediate response that followed. The officer described how, in the first few seconds after the shot, instinct and training merged into rapid action. He explained how he moved toward Kirk, shielding him, assessing the injury, and attempting to stabilize him. His description was firm but not sensational. He made it clear that his focus was on saving a life, not interpreting the cause. What stood out most was his rejection of online claims suggesting the injury was staged, exaggerated, or fabricated. His account clarified that the situation was real and urgent, and that misinformation circulating afterward had overshadowed the seriousness of the moment. He expressed concern about how quickly false narratives take root, especially when shared by people who were not present. The spread of confusion, he said, added emotional strain to an already difficult situation. He reminded listeners that emergencies seldom look clean or cinematic. In the chaos of the moment, nothing feels controlled. His recounting of the incident reinforced that what unfolded was a true medical emergency, handled by people doing their best under extreme conditions. He encouraged the public to understand that speculation can cause harm, not only to the investigation but also to those still processing the trauma of the event. His words acted as a plea for empathy, reminding viewers that the people involved were human beings navigating a crisis, not characters in an online mystery. The sixth point expanded on the medical response itself. The officer detailed how he used the emergency equipment he carried, applying pressure, packing the wound, and working continuously to control the bleeding until Kirk could be transported. He did not discuss the wound graphically. Instead, he focused on explaining the steps taken, steps any trained responder would recognize. He highlighted the importance of preparedness, explaining that carrying the right tools is a basic requirement in their line of work. His account also addressed misunderstandings about how first aid should appear. He clarified that real emergency care does not always resemble what people expect from movies or television. There is no ceremony, no dramatic choreography, only rapid, instinctive action. He also explained that in emergencies involving significant injuries, responders must prioritize stabilization over appearance. His recounting helped dismantle misconceptions and brought a more grounded understanding of medical response under pressure. What emerged from his description was a reminder that in crisis situations, perfection is impossible. All anyone can do is respond with everything they know in the moments that matter most. The seventh point confronted the broader wave of misinformation that followed the incident. The officer addressed claims about fabricated evidence, staged injuries, malfunctioning microphones, and other theories that had spread online. Without mocking or dismissing anyone directly, he explained that these theories did not reflect what he witnessed. He urged viewers to consider the difference between speculation and experience, reminding them that confusion often thrives when details are incomplete. He defended the professionalism of the team and emphasized that their actions were consistent with their training. His tone remained calm and respectful, focusing on the need for clarity rather than criticism. He acknowledged that in today's digital world, misinformation spreads faster than facts. Yet he stressed that denying the reality of a crisis minimizes the work of those who responded and complicates the healing process. His words served as a quiet call for responsibility, both from those who share information and those who consume it. The eighth key point in the officer's account centered on one of the most contested and emotionally sensitive elements of the entire situation, the confirmation and conduct of the autopsy. In the aftermath of any sudden or traumatic death, particularly one that attracts public attention, people often look for certainty in the middle of confusion. They want clear explanations, definite timelines, and answers that leave no room for doubt. The officer understood this instinct well, and this is why he approached the topic with a tone of calm precision and firm reassurance. He began by explaining that the autopsy was not delayed, not obstructed, and certainly not avoided. Instead, the request for an autopsy was submitted immediately, almost reflexively, as soon as the incident transitioned from a medical emergency into a matter requiring forensic clarity. According to him, senior officials moved swiftly and decisively, coordinating their efforts to ensure everything proceeded in accordance with protocol. This was not a moment of hesitation or confusion, it was a moment of professional alignment among people who understood the importance of getting the facts right from the very beginning. The officer emphasized that the purpose of the autopsy was not to silence the public, nor to provide a convenient narrative for authorities. Its purpose was simple but essential, to establish clear, medical facts, facts that could withstand public scrutiny, legal challenges, and the emotional pressures of a community searching for understanding. He noted that in situations where emotions run high, the temptation to fill gaps with speculation becomes almost irresistible. But speculation, he warned, is a poor substitute for truth, especially when misinformation can so easily spread and distort public perception. He described how the autopsy report became a foundational document in the broader investigation. Without it, investigators would have been operating blindly, relying only on witness accounts, memories, and assumptions, all of which are naturally limited and prone to distortion during traumatic events. A medical examination, by contrast, offers something that no rumor or social media thread can match: objective, physical evidence analyzed by trained, qualified specialists. The officer then went on to highlight how crucial it is to follow proper procedures during such crises. When uncertainty is widespread and fear begins to fill the gaps left by incomplete information, even small procedural missteps can be interpreted as intentional wrongdoing. This is why, he explained, the autopsy was assigned to professionals with recognized expertise and conducted under strictly regulated conditions. Every step, from the initial documentation to the final written report, followed established standards designed to preserve accuracy and credibility. He made it clear that the autopsy findings were not crafted to fit any predetermined storyline. They were simply the result of medical examination, straightforward, grounded in evidence, and indispensable to the investigation. These findings, he said, offered essential clarity, helping both officials and the public understand the nature of the injury, the cause of death, and the physical realities of what occurred. In a climate where rumors were spreading faster than facts, this clarity was invaluable. This eighth point therefore served as a reminder that responsible investigations rely on professional procedures, not popular narratives. While people may form opinions based on emotion, belief, or online claims, official conclusions must be guided by verified information. The officer stressed that this principle is not only a matter of good practice, it is a matter of justice. And justice, he insisted, can only be upheld when facts, not assumptions, lead the way. The ninth point in the officer's testimony moved deeper into the realm of forensic detail by addressing the bullet's trajectory and related evidence. This topic had been the subject of intense debate, with many individuals drawing conclusions from incomplete information or interpretations that lacked scientific grounding. The officer recognized how easily misunderstandings can arise when people attempt to interpret complex forensic data without proper context, so he took great care in explaining what he had observed and what experts later confirmed. He explained that the bullet's path, as determined by forensic specialists, was consistent with the observations made during the initial medical response. This alignment, he said, mattered greatly. When medical professionals at the scene make an assessment, it is typically based on visible injuries and immediate examination. Later, forensic experts conduct a deeper analysis involving medical imaging, anatomical study, and precise measurement. The fact that these two sets of findings supported each other reinforced the accuracy of the overall conclusion. Importantly, he stressed that determining a bullet's trajectory is not a matter of guesswork or subjective interpretation. It is a physical process governed by observable evidence, entry points, exit points, tissue damage, bone displacement, and the angle of penetration. These are measurable facts, not opinions. This is why he placed such importance on letting trained forensic experts lead the analysis rather than allowing the conversation to be driven by online speculation or emotionally charged assumptions. The officer acknowledged that forensic science can sometimes feel intimidating or overly technical to the general public. Terms like trajectory, entry wound, or ballistic profile may seem distant and clinical, especially when people are grieving or outraged. For this reason, he deliberately avoided drowning the explanation in complicated detail. Instead, he focused on the core truth: the physical evidence matched the medical assessment, and there was no contradiction between what was seen at the scene and what the forensic experts later confirmed in their report. He pointed out that misunderstandings often arise when people try to reconstruct events based on second-hand information, blurred images, or incomplete snippets of reports. Without expertise and direct access to evidence, such attempts can easily lead to flawed conclusions. He emphasized that it is the responsibility of investigators, not social media, to interpret evidence. And while the public has every right to ask questions, the answers must ultimately come from science, not speculation or conspiracy-driven analysis. This ninth point reminded listeners that every traumatic event generates questions, and that is natural. But the answers must be grounded in factual findings. Forensic clarity is not merely helpful, it is essential. Without it, investigations risk drifting into narrative-driven territory where emotion overpowers evidence. By explaining the bullet's trajectory in a straightforward and transparent manner, the officer reinforced the message that truth is best served by expertise, not assumption. The 10th point addressed another highly charged issue: the handling of digital evidence, including video footage, audio recordings, and other electronic materials. In the digital age, transparency is often judged by whether video footage exists, who controls it, and how it is handled. Rumors can spread quickly: claims that footage was deleted, altered, hidden, misplaced, or manipulated. The officer knew this and spoke directly to these concerns. He explained that every piece of video and audio evidence relevant to the case was collected immediately and handled strictly according to established procedures. There was no secret deletion, no attempt to suppress information, and no operational mismanagement. Instead, each file was logged, secured, and transferred along the proper chain of custody. This is not merely internal protocol, it is a legal requirement designed to ensure that evidence remains credible and admissible in any judicial setting. He took time to describe what the chain of evidence actually means. It refers to the documented, unbroken path that evidence takes from the moment it is collected to the moment it is presented in an investigation or courtroom. Any gaps, mishandling, or undocumented transfers could weaken or invalidate the evidence, which is why the process must be followed with absolute precision. The officer reassured listeners that in this case, every step was taken properly. Nothing was hidden, and nothing was destroyed. The idea that footage had been tampered with, he said, simply did not align with the documented evidence trail. Every digital file was accounted for, preserved, and reviewed by the appropriate investigative teams. Whether the footage came from body cameras, security devices, or smartphones, each item was systematically secured and stored. This point was critical because it addressed not just the facts of the case but the deeper issue of public trust. In the absence of clear communication, people often assume the worst. If authorities do not explain evidence handling promptly and transparently, rumors of foul play can take root quickly. By offering a straightforward explanation of how the digital files were managed, the officer aimed to counter such fears and restore confidence in the investigative process. His final message on this topic was simple yet powerful: the systems designed to preserve evidence functioned exactly as they were meant to function. There was no breakdown, no breach, and no attempt at concealment. Everything was handled with the professionalism and transparency required by law. In the end, what emerged from the officer's full testimony was not a revelation of secret plots or orchestrated cover-ups, but rather a deeply human story shaped by sudden crisis, emotional strain, and the inevitable miscommunication that arises in high-pressure moments. Reality, he implied, is often far less dramatic than the narratives constructed online, where certainty is sometimes manufactured out of speculation, and fear spreads rapidly in the absence of verified information. The interview revealed how misunderstandings develop when there is a gap between what the public sees and what officials experience firsthand. It illustrated how trauma can distort memory, how rumors can overshadow truth, and how frustration can quickly turn into suspicion when answers feel slow or incomplete. But it also showed something else: that clarity is possible when people commit to communicating honestly, listening carefully, and grounding their conclusions in facts rather than fear. The officer did not claim to have every answer. He did not pretend that the situation was simple or that mistakes were impossible. But his account brought context to chaos, and perspective to confusion. It offered a reminder that truth is often messy, fragile, and imperfect, but still worth pursuing with patience and discipline. Ultimately, the real lesson in his testimony is the importance of transparency, collaboration, and responsible interpretation during moments of crisis. When uncertainty is high, responsible communication becomes not just helpful but essential. And in a world where narratives can shift with a single post or video clip, the commitment to factual accuracy becomes an act of public service. For more balanced reporting and careful analysis like this, consider subscribing.